Here's what's coming today on the Woodworking Network podcast.
I'm one guy with an old-fashioned spray gun in my hand, taking on a machine that, if you saw the teaser videos, it sprayed all the doors in 6 minutes. So no matter what side of the fence you're on, we're all going to learn something.
Welcome to the 5th season of the Woodworking Network podcast and a new episode. Join us as we explore the business of woodworking, big and small, and what it takes to succeed. I'm Will Sampson. Today's episode is sponsored by FDMC Magazine. My guest is Brad Cairns from Quantum Lean and Stolbeck Machinery, talking about a competition we're calling the Ultimate Finishing Challenge. But first I want to talk about friend or foe in tech. The recent explosion in interest in artificial intelligence has spawned a global argument that often devolves into a friend or foe debate. This is, of course, nothing new. Every advance in technology, probably going back to the Stone Age, has prompted furious wrangling about whether it advances civilization or represents the end of the world as we know it. Sometimes we just need to stop and take a breath. Take me. I'm a walking anachronism. I embrace and occasionally teach primitive skills such as traditional archery, blacksmithing, and hand tool woodworking. But I also have a CNC router in my woodworking shop and love what it can do. As a writer, I started out professionally using a manual typewriter, and I still own one. But I've written way more words on a computer keyboard, including this essay. My friends all know I regularly invoke the image of the Terminator's Skynet, of machines taking over the world whenever something goes wrong with technology or there appears to be some kind of overreach coming. But are machines and computers really the enemy? I think the key has to be in how we see and use technology. Is it a tool or a crutch? We recently had a headline for a story that just wasn't working. I was at a loss for the moment to think of a better headline. We put the story and a prompt into an AI chatbot that immediately came up with all sorts of suggestions. I thought they were all flawed, but the process helped unlock my brain to think of a better solution. Early in my journalistic career, I worked in mostly open format newspaper newsrooms. No cubicles, no walls, just a big room with a bunch of people typing and talking. If you had a question or got hung up on something you were writing, there were always several people within earshot who could offer suggestions. You rarely took a suggestion verbatim, but it often unlocked new ideas. The new AI chatbots can be used that way. In the shop, automated equipment can speed flow in production, improve quality, and even open up new opportunities for additional business. But it still takes smart thinking, human thinking, to integrate all of that effectively. Frequently, adding technology might solve one problem, but create new ones. Embracing that reality and figuring out how to make the most of it is predominantly a human-centered task. It touches on factory layouts, material handling, order of operations, human resources, and sifting through 1,000 variables at once to come up with a workable plan, put it to work, then reevaluate and improve it. I'm not really worried about the machines taking over the world, but I am worried about people who blindly embrace technology as a substitute for human intelligence. If there is a contest between John Henry and the steam hammer, I'm still going to root for John Henry, but the management side of my brain will be thinking about how I could best use the skills of both the man and the machine to do what neither of them could do by themselves. Before we get to our interview with Brad Cairns, let's pause for a word from our sponsor. FDMC Magazine is your vital source of information to improve your woodworking business. Whether it's keeping you apprised of the latest advances in manufacturing, helping you solve your wood technology problems with Gene Wengert, or inspiring you with case histories about successful businesses and best practices, FDMC Magazine is there to be the sharpest business tool in your shop. Learn more and subscribe for free at woodworkingnetwork.com/FDMC. Now let's talk with Brad Cairns. My guest today is Brad Cairns from Quantum Lean and Stolbeck Machinery. Welcome back to the Woodworking Network podcast, Brad.
Well, thanks, Will, for having me again.
It's always fun. Now, in addition to your lean manufacturing and machinery hats, you also own your own door manufacturing factory. And you've come up with this crazy idea that you think you can put the finish on doors with mostly manual equipment faster and more efficiently than a big expensive finishing line. So tell me, tell me about this thing that we're calling the ultimate finishing challenge.
Well, okay, so let's back up even to where it started was
Okay.
I don't know, somewhere in the States. I'm on planes every day, so it's just like get on a tube, get out. I don't usually know where I am. I usually ask the waitress at dinner what city I'm in. But so I'm at this customer and they're looking at the robot sander solution, and the space that they were in was kind of tight. And so they're asking, because we have a few options, like which machine do you think, would be best suited for us? And we have a 2 foot by 4 foot sanding robot, and I'm talking about that one. And their booth was like just a few feet away from where they intended on doing the sanding. And so I was standing there and I said, but we have a Cosmo XL model also, and that robot requires no human intervention in terms of once you put the part in, it's going to sand it, flip it, sand the back, pick it up, put it on a conveyor, and it'll exit the conveyor all on its own. And so I started talking about that with this customer, and I like out of nowhere, this idea pops in my head. And I looked at him and I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, don't buy anything. I'll be back in a month. And I literally, I ran out of his shop and I came straight back to my door company. We had the XL here because we were testing it for another customer before we shipped it. So I had a very infinite or finite amount of time to test this idea that I came up with. And so we set up the cameras and, we ran the experiment. And in lockstep with doing that, I mean, just doing it with no comparison is boring, right? So that's where we came up with, hey, let's challenge this new concept I have against the best of the old concepts.
Which would be the fully automated
Yeah,
finishing line.
right.
Right. So how is the contest going to be structured? What are we really measuring here? How
Okay,
are you
so
going to do it?
yeah, so I think we're gonna take all the normal measurements that we would do in a business. Obviously, like the time for throughput. So how long did it take to get those parts through the system? The cost per door, and that number, like everyone can have their own calculation, but as long as the formula doesn't change from one process to the next, then whether you amortize it over 6 years or 3 years or whatever, but we're going to take industry standards, amortize the cost of the equipment over 5 years, how many doors a day, blah 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 blah. That will give us the cost per door, your labor hours that went into it, and all of that will generate a cost number. We can then take a square foot footprint and say, well, how many square feet does one take versus the other take? And then you can take that square foot at just at that measurement and say, well, one is, or you can calculate your average is, $13 a square foot or whatever, if you want to see it in dollars. So
Well,
I'd say time, money, labor.
right, all three. So what I think we're going to get to is some information about all of those metrics and how it relates to different kinds of finishing situations. So,
Yeah.
so even if somebody doesn't finish quite the way you do, or quite the way that the automated shop does, they ought to be able to learn something from this exercise that might help them improve their finishing.
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think when we started to undertake this, that was the big takeaway, was going to be like, obviously I'm one guy with an old fashioned spray gun in my hand, taking on a machine that, if you saw the teaser videos, it sprayed all the doors in 6 minutes. So no matter what side of the fence you're on, we're all going to learn something. And I think that was the big takeaway from this, was like, someone's going to call, and like, how many emails I've already gotten. They're like, wow, I don't finish that way. And so this doesn't apply. It's like, no,
Right.
no, no, back up the bus.
Yeah.
I had to do a test based on like a traditional high quality finish with no shortcuts. So a lot of people are priming wet on wet, sanding top coat, and it works. It works great, especially when you're sanding with a robot. But we had to do this test for the majority. That's like, we prime, we sand, we prime, we sand, we top coat. And so
And
that's,
following all the manufacturer's recommendations for the finish and all that kind of thing.
100%, exactly. And the
Right.
equipment, the dry times, the time in the ovens. Um, yeah. So we just, maybe it doesn't apply to everybody, but whether you look at the rocket ship spray system or you look at the system that I've developed, I guarantee you're going to learn something.
Now, what kind of equipment are you going to be using? I think you have like a Kremlin spray gun and, pretty conventional setup.
Yeah, totally. Other than, the robot to help sand, because I've eradicated hand sanding out of my life forever, and I almost refuse to do it. And that's why everyone said, well, why did you only do a 20 door test? I'm like, because I don't want to hand sand more than 20 doors, because I did that like as part of the comparison. I
Mhm.
sanded 20 door. I gotta tell you, Will, have you like, when was the last time you sanded 20 doors? It was a nightmare.
Actually, not so long ago, doing doors for my kitchen.
Oh my God. I was dying the whole time. I'm like, I can't believe people still do this. And of course I've got Cosmo XL standing there just watching me. And I'm like,
Right,
whatever, it's all
right. The
for the greater
robot is
good.
laughing at
Uh,
you.
yeah. So, I mean, so in terms of that, we had to assume the high quality, we had to follow manufacturers' recommendations. And, you know, I forget your last question.
Well,
The
that
train.
no, that basically covers it. But I do want to know, and now, so the automated shop, that's Creative Woodcraft in BC, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So Canadian shop versus Canadian shop, of
Yeah.
course.
Go Canada.
and and so they have a Chefla automated finishing system,
Yep. Yep. They do.
and then
They've
they
got the,
have some kind of high-tech drying system too, and some other
yep.
things like that.
Yes, I believe they've got the sunspot in their oven room. They've got a panel cleaner at the front of the line. They certainly weren't missing anything. That's for sure. And what I was spraying with, for comparison, was just a pump, like a Kremlin pump. We've had it for probably 30 years. Nothing fancy. Um, did all of the drying from my side, just on racks. We sprayed flat. We waited
Right.
for it to dry. We flipped it, sprayed it again. There was no fancy anything in terms of the finishing, other than, I will say, the approach to the work.
And we're just on this for this contest, we're just doing primer. We're just doing 20 doors primed, correct?
Yeah, and so, I got a lot of comments on LinkedIn and stuff, and everyone said, "Wow, why didn't you take it all the way to top coat?" And we 100% could have, but on the finishing line side of it, just add 6 minutes, because that's how long it took for them to top coat it. So, and in my process, which I'm not, I don't want to give it away yet, but the top coating wouldn't have taken me any longer either. So we can just take that math and add it on the end,
Well, and the other
and
thing that occurs to me is that there's a lot more variability in top coats and what people are going to do with a door than the priming part of it. And so there you're going to get more of those messages on LinkedIn.
I do this, I do that, I do this. Trust
Yeah,
me, we all
yeah.
put coatings on there, and this is gonna be great for anyone who's doing any kind of finishing, guaranteed. I will say though that like lean, we all know that lean is for 2% of the world, and everybody else just doesn't think it works or whatever. I I would put forward that even the people that watch what I do probably will be nervous to implement it. Like I
Nervous
think,
how? What do you, what,
well, I just think
afraid to implement it?
it's a little bit radical, a little bit. There's some sacred cows that have to go, and like any new thing in the world. Like, we're so used to doing it one way. Even when you see something that might be better or might help you in some way, you're just like, I don't know. That's not gonna work for me. Like, how many times do we hear that about lean? That's for car guys, that's not for woodworkers.
Yeah, right,
It's like,
right, right. Oh God. Now, you recently told me that nobody enters a race they don't think they can win. What makes you think you can beat the automated shop?
I don't know. I think I have that disease, that every entrepreneur has. They think that their idea works, and I guess that's what keeps us all going, is just the fact that we don't see the bad side. We see the good side and steam right ahead. And my partner at Quantum Lean, you know Lynn, right?
Yep.
You met.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. So I'm telling her about this contest, and she's like, "Okay, Brad, think about this. What if you win? And what if you win by a lot? What's the negative side of that?" And I was kind of like, "Oh, I don't think about that. I don't know. what what could it possibly be?" And so anyway, she said, "Well, what happened to that guy at Boeing? If this some guy goes missing or something, what happened to the guy that invented the electric car also goes missing, or not the electric, the water car, and he went missing." And I said, "Well, I think I don't think that I'm going to go missing." And she said, "But what you might run into is people like slandering or challenging or trying to prove you don't know what you're talking about." And I was like, "Lynn, you're crazy. That's not going to happen." And I can tell you, it didn't take long to see some comments on LinkedIn, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I got accused of manipulating information for my agenda, I believe were the words. And I was just
Right.
like, really? Like, we're all just woodworkers trying to learn together, you know?
Well, and that's what we want to do is, what the way we're going to structure this is we're going to have this all play out in a webinar.
Yeah,
And we're going to have you and Will Duggan from Creative Woodcraft in the webinar. And I'm going to ask a bunch of questions about the same measuring factors that we've been talking about earlier, and how their process works and what you guys do, and give as much information as we possibly can to the audience so that they can determine how they might want to improve their finishing system based on the results and based on what they're comfortable with. And then we're going to show the videos and see how fast it goes and tally things up and declare a winner.
right. I
And
mean, I'm really looking forward to it.
that's all going to happen on July 10th. If anybody wants to sign up for the webinar, they can go to woodworkingnetwork.com/UFC, as in Ultimate Finishing Challenge.
Very creative.
And or you can go to stolbach.ca and you can place an early vote there on who you think's going to win.
And yeah, so if people get in quick and sign up now, at least, we're guaranteeing them a seat at the big reveal. Um, I'm like all the information still coming in, and we're still editing some videos and stuff. But for the skeptics that are like, well, you can do a lot of things with cameras. We have videoed every angle, like every machine, the whole time, and videoed a big plan view. So there is no possibility to manipulate anything. If somebody's like really adamant about it, I will send you all, like 8 hours of video, and you can watch it unfold in real time. Of course, we're asking our editors to speed up the video, but both segments of that test were videoed in that fashion. So once it's all distilled down, there's just there can't be a debate.
That sounds great. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know who won. I won't know who won until the die is cast at the end.
Well, I don't know if you could keep a secret, so I can't tell you.
Oh, right. Yeah, you don't trust the journalist.
Front page ad, finishing line destroys Brad. Also, he's not writing columns for us anymore.
No, I really, I think this is a great idea and a lot of fun. But I really want to emphasize that we're trying, we're not trying to, eliminate automation or eliminate manual processes. We're trying to help people that use either or both to get the best information, to get the most out of all their processes.
Couldn't agree more. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a process thing, because even all I was using was our sanding robot and the manual spray gun. But at Creative Wood, they also are a Stolbeck customer. They also use the robot to do the sanding.
Right, right, right.
So they had the Cadillac. I mean, like, you have a fully automated finishing line, and they're sanding with the sanding robot. I mean, this whole challenge is really challenging processes. And like most things in lean, it's a little bit counterintuitive. Um, and it's definitely not like, don't like, if I get beat by a finishing line, it's like, don't buy a robot. Or if I beat the finishing line, it's like, well, don't buy a finishing line. That's absolutely not what it's all about. And one of the cool things that has started to evolve as we're distilling down all the videos is we're starting to be able to see when things make sense for different size companies. And I think that information, like, if you watch the videos, you're at the webinar and you see both processes unfolding, you're starting to decide, well, I have a finishing line, so how does that apply to me? Or if you don't have a finishing line, you're like, oh, I don't have it. How does that apply to me? And then we start developing best practices for each system. And so if I have a spray line, this is the best practice. If I don't, this is the best practice.
No, I think that's great. I'm really looking forward to it. So that's mark your calendars. It's July 10th is the webinar, and woodworkingnetwork.com/UFC is the direct line to register. And may the best process win, right, Brad?
I mean, the best process. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it was so much fun to do. Everyone at Creative was awesome. And then everyone we're interacting with through our social media channels, it's just great. I think we're getting a cool buzz around it. And with any luck, we can, with the help of our audience, and develop some great processes for all of us woodworkers to benefit from.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you much, Brad. This
No
is
problem.
great.
Thanks for having me on.
And this update, the Ultimate Finishing Challenge webinar, is now sponsored by Guffey Systems. Guffey Systems provides award-winning products for furniture, millwork, and cabinet finishing that optimize efficiency and reduce waste. Register for the webinar at woodworkingnetwork.com/UFC. That's it for today. If you're looking for more of our podcasts, you can find all of them at woodworkingnetwork.com/podcasts and in popular podcast channels. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks again to today's sponsor, FDMC Magazine. If you have a comment or topic you'd like us to explore, contact me at will.sampson@woodworkingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening.